So we heard from the Treasurer this morning saying that New South Wales is the gold standard. David Littleproud's also been out saying that the Premier is panicking. What's your view on how the Premier is doing at the moment?
I think the Premier is dealing with a difficult situation in a very good way. And one thing about Daniel Andrews is that when the going gets tough, he is there and he stands up and he faces the music and he makes the decisions that are required for our state. His leadership, but also the efforts of every Victorian, got us through the second wave, which was a remarkable achievement by global standards. It's had a huge impact on the state, no doubt, but it was an incredible achievement. And I think, I understand that the feelings that are being had around Victoria today. I understand, coming from regional Victoria myself, the points that are being made, but I think we've got to remember this is a very short lockdown. It's in that sense not dissimilar from what we've seen in Queensland and Western Australia in the last month. It is, of course, a bit different because of what happened last year, that it's against that backdrop. And so I think all Victorians are feeling kind of triggered at this moment. But we've just got to take it a day at a time. And I think there's cause for hope. And with any luck, this comes to an end on Wednesday.
There has, though, been another failure in hotel quarantine. Do you believe contact tracing is up to scratch?
I think there's been huge improvements in contact tracing in Victoria since the middle of last year. So I do have a sense of confidence about this. We've got to take this at a day at a time. But so far, the cases that have come, and there were 3 over the weekend, came from those group of people that were being contact traced. So. I think there have been improvements. I do have a sense of confidence in that. We've
but
seen
still a long way short. There has been improvements, but still a long way short of where it needs to be.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I mean, I think we've got to let this play out. I mean, the actions of the authorities in the last few days appear to be very thorough, and we've got cause for hope in terms of this not going for a prolonged period of time. We need to see whether that's what transpires. But I think it's too early to make a judgment that this isn't working. We're right in the middle of it. I think the other point to make about quarantine is, there have been issues with hotel quarantine around the nation, is the truth. And we've got to remember, quarantining is a function of the federal government. I mean, the real thing here is the federal government have gone completely missing on the question of quarantine. It's right there in the Constitution. It's their job. And they're not out there doing it. And last year, the Holton Review said that the federal government needed to be more involved. It needed to find facilities outside of our major population centres, and I'm still waiting to hear what the plan is from the federal government about that.
Well, the Premier, Daniel Andrews, wants to have a conversation about the number of travellers now returning home and going into hotel quarantine. That kind of clashes with your pitch to get more and more Australians home. Do you support his message, his point of view about this conversation that's needed about a lesser number of people coming home?
Well, ultimately, the federal government, through the course of last year, was effectively asking the states to do their job. That was what was going on. Quarantine belongs to the federal government. So it's not surprising to me, that states where the burden has been placed upon them are making the points that they are. We do have a lot of stranded Australians overseas. It is the federal government's job to get them back home. It is the federal government's job to ensure that when they come home, there are appropriate quarantine facilities put in place and arrangements put in place. Ultimately, this is a question for the federal government. And when you hear, government MPs just going out there saying, well, ultimately quarantine's a matter for the states, it absolutely is not. I mean, it's there in black and white in the Constitution. This is a federal responsibility.
What about this facility near Geelong? Would you support that happening?
Look, I think it's a very good idea and one that should be worked through. I know Avalon well, and I know the management there well, and it's something that they've been considering for some time. Actually, I mean, it isn't in a major population centre. It's isolated. They've got a lot of facilities there, and they've got a lot of land. So I hope this is an idea which is being taken seriously. It says the Victorian government is reported to be considering it. Again, I want to know what the federal government's plan is here, but it seems to me that that would be an option for them to consider as well.
Okay, some new JobKeeper numbers have come out today showing the amount of people who have dropped off the program. There's only a 44% drop in Victoria, though. Do you believe that more financial help will be needed just for the state of Victoria alone post-March?
I think there are various parts of the economy, and Victoria is an obvious one given what's played out over the last 6 months. But it's not just Victoria, it's sectors like tourism, anything really to do with aviation, where business is not back to normal. I mean, when COVID-19 hit, a line was drawn through the business models of a whole lot of businesses around this country. JobKeeper is very important. Remember, the government weren't going to do it to begin with, but having a wage subsidy in place was fundamentally critical to enabling those businesses to survive. Now, when we're at the point of transitioning back to some sense of normality, there's got to be a sense of realism from the government about whether or not life is back to some semblance of normality. For large parts of Victoria, it isn't. But for large sectors across the country, it isn't. And tourism is an obvious one. And JobKeeper is scheduled to come to an end in about 6 weeks. So we really need to be hearing from the government right now, what is the plan for tourism or for aviation? Are they going to do anything? Or are they going to let those places like Cairns, like the Gold Coast, fall off a cliff?
Okay, and just finally, Richard, there is a report in the paper this morning, and the Treasurer wouldn't confirm whether this is going to happen or not, but the suggestion is that there will be one payment when it comes to JobSeeker. It'll be one payment, so all of the supplements, etc., will be rolled into one. What do you make of that?
Well, I think we need to see the detail. We've for a long time been saying that the JobSeeker or New Start before COVID started was not sufficient, that for people being expected to survive on $40 a day was simply completely unrealistic. We were making that point well before COVID struck. As we come out of COVID-19 and we go back to a new normal in relation to New Start, it's really important that there be an increase from that $40 a day. Now, if what we're hearing from the government is some consideration about how that might happen, that's great. But ultimately, what we need to be hearing from the government, given that this is being planned in the next 6 weeks, is what is their plan, and are they really going to have New Start in effect continue at $40 a day, because that is ridiculously low.